Mr Speaker, the residents of my constituency in South Basildon and East Thurrock are facing a triple whammy of increased council tax of 50%, reduced public services and a borrowing on £1 billion worth of emergency funding, which is 1% above base. That 1% is £10 million approximately per year that's going to the Treasury that could be spent on frontline services in Thurrock. Will the Prime Minister commit to reducing that rate so the money can go where it belongs?
Well, I thank him for his question. The last government made life even more difficult for councils needing exceptional financial support by charging a premium on borrowing. That was the wrong decision, which had a huge impact on vital services, and we will be taking a different approach. We're delivering in real terms increase on core public, on government spending power, and that will benefit his constituents.
Sir John Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition took time at her party's conference to say that a little bit of adversity in life is good for people's mental health. That approach clearly did not work for the 2 million people who are stuck on mental health waiting lists because of the last Tory government. Can the Prime Minister commit to tackling mental health waits in the NHS?
I think we've obviously recognised the devastating impact that mental health problems have on people's livelihoods, and Lord Darcy's report showed that waiting lists are far too long, and there's a shocking decline in mental health in children under the last government. Giving mental health the attention it needs, we're doing by recruiting 8,500 mental health workers, much needed, and of course reforming the Mental Health Act, which in my view is long overdue.
Alex Blower.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chalk stream rivers are rare with a unique ecology. Most of them are in the UK and 2 are in my constituency of North East Hampshire. Last year, chalk stream rivers were hit with 14,000 hours of sewage discharges, and the previous government did nothing despite calls from my honourable friend, the MP for Chesham and Amersham. Will the Prime Minister introduce a special protection for our chalk stream rivers?
Well, I thank her for raising this, and we are committed to protection and restoration of unique chalk streams. She's right, the destruction of our waterways should never have been allowed, and we've announced immediate action to end this disgraceful behaviour. New powers with tougher penalties, including fines, banning bonuses and bringing criminal charges against those who persistently break the law. We've also launched a water commission. Thank you.
White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the Prime Minister's leadership on an international scale to smash the criminal gangs that smuggle people across the border. This Labour government having returned over 9,000 people with no right to be in the UK, which is 20% more than the party opposite. Will the Prime Minister confirm that he will continue this trade and smash the gangs that profit from people's misery?
Yes, the last government lost control of our borders. And in the first 6 months of this year, small bite arrivals were up 18% on the same period last year. They spent £700 million on returning, 4 volunteers to Rwanda. Since coming into office, we've returned 9,400 people with no right to be here. They talked about getting the flights off. We've got the flights off, including the single biggest deportation flight. And so that's why we're investing another £75 million in smashing the gangs. We're absolutely determined to have a serious response to a serious question, not a gimmick that achieved absolutely nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ensuring every child has access to a great education, I'm sure, is a priority for all across this House, and I welcome the announcements for extra funding for children with SEND at the budget. The Chancellor, in her speech, announced a £2.3 billion increase in core spending and £1 billion for SEN. However, the budget document states that they are, in fact, both from the same pot, announced twice, which is correct.
The Chancellor made this absolutely clear in the budget. putting that huge investment into special educational needs. It's an issue that is of concern across this House, because I think all members are recognising the appalling record of the last government. It's been raised from its own benches, the appalling state of SEN. So I'm very proud of the money that this government is putting in where the last government failed.
Mr. Strathern.
Mr. Speaker, there's not a week that goes by where my office isn't contacted by young people and their families who are being let down by the shocking state of SEND provision locally. Across my constituency, I'm trying to work across party lines to push both Central Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire Council to do more. And I welcome the fantastic extra news in the budget about additional funding and subsequent announcements about increased support for mainstream settings. But we know we're going to need to do more. So can the Prime Minister assure my constituents that we won't shy away from the whole system reform needed to finally ensure every young person has the support they need to thrive in school?
No, we won't shy away from that challenge, because it's far too important for the children and the families and the communities involved, and therefore we will not only put the necessary money in, but we will look at the reform that is needed alongside the investment, and we will finally fix the problem, another of the problems that we've inherited from the lot opposite.
Final question, Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 29th of November, this House will be asked to consider at second reading one of the most consequential pieces of legislation to this country's make-up. But I am generally approaching this with an open mind, but have many concerns. And what concerns me, Prime Minister, is the short space of time on that day. So could I ask you, Prime Minister, that before we get to the 29th of November, that the government will make a commitment that we can have 2 days, 16 hours of protected time on the floor of the House in government time, that we can examine and debate in this House the report stage, so that many of the arguments we are concerned about may be able to be brought out then, because otherwise, Prime Minister, people like myself may decline a second reading over fear that we may not get to be able to debate these issues in full.
Well, I'm grateful to him for raising this issue. It is obviously an important issue, an important vote. And I know that there are strongly held views on both sides of the debate across this House, and that's why it will be a free vote. I think every member needs to decide for themselves how they will vote on it. It's a free vote. I do think there's sufficient time allocated to it, but it is an important issue.
Right, that completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches. No points forward to come after UQ's and statements, which you well know. Mr. Holder. Right, let us come to the urgent question. Nigel Farage.
To ask the Secretary for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs what the latest update is on the transfer of sovereignty of the Chagos Islands from the United Kingdom to Mauritius.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. Following 2 years of negotiation under 3 Prime Ministers, on the 3rd of October, this government secured a deal that will protect the secure operation of the UK-US base on Diego Garcia well into the next century. This government inherited a situation where this future was under threat. International courts were reaching judgments on the basis that Mauritius had sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. International organisations were also taking steps, Mr. Speaker, not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty claims. This was not sustainable. The base, Mr. Speaker, on Diego Garcia plays a critical role in countering an array of threats to regional and international security. Without legal certainty, Mr Speaker, the base simply cannot operate effectively. Continued uncertainty would be a gift to our adversaries. This is why the agreement has been welcomed by all parts of the US system and by other critical regional security partners, including India. Agreeing this deal now on our terms, Mr Speaker, means we've been able to secure strong protections that will allow the base to operate as it has done. We've secured a deal that protects our national interests, respects the interests of our partners and upholds the international rule of law. There will be clear commitments, Mr Speaker, in the treaty for robust security arrangements, including preventing the presence of foreign security forces on the outer islands, ensuring that the base can continue to operate securely and effectively. We would not, Mr Speaker, have signed off an agreement that compromised any of our security interests or those of our allies. And this agreement will be underpinned by a financial settlement that is acceptable to both sides and will underpin a strong long-term partnership with Mauritius. This was crucial to securing the agreement, Mr Speaker. This government will not scrimp on our national security. However, I am sure the House will understand, Mr Speaker, that it is not normal practice for the UK to reveal the value of payments for military bases anywhere across the globe, because to do that would put them at risk of their future secure operations. The deal, Mr Speaker, will also deliver benefits for the Chagossian community who were removed from the islands in the 1960s and 1970s. And I know that the whole House have already and will again join with me in expressing regret for that shameful episode. Mauritius will now be able to implement a programme of resettlement to the islands other than Diego Garcia, and we will work together to start a programme of visits for Chagossians to all of the islands. And the UK will finance a new trust fund for Mauritius to support Chagossians and provide additional government support to those living in the UK. All Chagossians will, of course, remain eligible for British citizenship and free to make their homes in the UK. We will work, Mr Speaker, with Mauritius to ensure the continued protection of the island's unique environment, with the shared objective of securing and protecting one of the world's most important marine environments, and this will include the establishment of a Mauritian Marine Protected Area. This agreement, Mr Speaker, also shuts down the possibility of the Indian Ocean being used as a dangerous illegal migration route to the UK, with Mauritius taking responsibility for any future arrivals. Mr Speaker, the long-term protection on the base on Diego Garcia has been the shared UK and US priority throughout. This agreement secures its future. We look forward to engaging with the incoming US administration. I congratulate both President Trump and Dr Ramgoolan on their recent election victories in the US and Mauritius respectively, and we look forward to working with their governments on this. This agreement is in all sides' shared interests and in our national security.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mauritius has no legal or historical claim to the sovereignty of a group of islands that are 1,300 miles away from where it is, nor does, from the International Court, it was purely an advisory opinion. There is no legal reason why we have to do any of this. Now, I warned the Foreign Secretary 6 weeks ago in this chamber that it was an enormous mistake to do this, given that we had a US presidential election coming up on November the 5th. And if you say to me, well, yes, it's okay, the United States are fully in favour, really? I can tell you that the incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, has form on this, right back to when the Right Honourable Member for Braintree was doing his best to give away the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. Indeed, he wrote to Secretary of State Blinken at the time. There is, I can assure you, having been in America last week, knowing also the incoming Defence Secretary very well, there is outright hostility to this deal. Whatever is said about a lease agreement, as we saw with Hong Kong, these agreements can very, very easily be broken. Diego Garcia was described to me by a senior Trump advisor as the most important island on the planet as far as America was concerned. So you're going to find outright hostility. And by the way, when it comes to the Chagossian people, yes, of course, what happened to them was truly awful. They do not wish to live. They're unanimous in this. They do not wish to live under Mauritian rule. They want to live under British rule because they actually trust us. There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm afraid, obviously, I fundamentally disagree with what the honourable gentleman has had to say. Let me be absolutely clear. This government inherited a situation where the long-term secure operation of this crucial military base, he is right on that one point, was under threat. International courts were reaching judgments, international organisations were taking steps not to undermine Mauritian sovereignty, and this threatened the secure and effective operation of the base. And in the absence of a negotiated solution, a legally binding decision against the UK seemed inevitable. This would have threatened the secure and effective operation of the base, and that was not sustainable. I note the comments he makes regarding the incoming US administration. We're looking very forward to working with them, and I'm sure that they will be being briefed on the full detail of this deal. And I am confident, Mr Speaker, that the details of this arrangement will allay any concerns. We would have not entered into any such arrangement in the first place.
Mr Francois, I welcome you back to the front bench, but I don't welcome you back to shout from it continuously. Do we understand that we need calm? This is an important debate, so I don't want the rhetoric coming from the Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've known the honourable gentleman a long time, and he knows he can come and speak to me at any point. No, absolutely, Mr Speaker, but he can come and speak to me about these matters at any point. Mr Speaker, we were very, very clear. The US administration that's incoming, we will be working very closely. We're working closely with the current US administration. This had support across the national security apparatus of the United States. We would never have entered into an arrangement. And indeed, of course, the previous government recognised the threats to the long-term operation of this base, which is why they started the negotiations in the first place. But it was this government that did the deal. Diego Garcia is absolutely important, but it is not at risk. It is more secure as a result of this deal. So what he is suggesting is simply not the case. He mentions the Chagossians. We all agree what happened to them in the past was completely wrong and shameful. That's been agreed on all sides of the House. I've engaged with the Chagossian community on a number of occasions. He will also recognise, Mr Speaker, that there are a range of views across the Chagossian community, including those who support this deal. But we've made sure that their interests are at the heart of this arrangement, whether it's in the trust fund, whether it's in the unilateral arrangements that we will do, the continued commitments to UK citizenship for Chagossians, and, of course, their ability to return, Mr Speaker, in terms of visits to all the islands and to a part of a resettlement programme that Mauritius will restart as a part of this treaty. So I am confident this deal is the right thing for our national security, it's the right thing for the Chagossian community, and it's the right thing for our allies and partners.
We heard representations from the Honourable Member for Clacton about upholding international law. Does the Minister agree with me that it is important that the UK fulfils its obligations in international law, and does he recognise, in fact, that in 2021 the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea confirmed that, in fact, Mauritius does have sovereignty over the Chagos Islands, and notwithstanding that this deal does secure the long-term certainty of the base on Diego Garcia?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. He's absolutely right. Agreeing this deal now on our terms means we've been able to secure protections that will allow the base to operate as it has done into the next century. It settles the historic sovereignty claims in a way that successfully balances our international law obligations with vital UK and US national security requirements.
Welcome, Dame Patel, to the front bench.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, the world is a more dangerous place than ever before in our lifetimes, and this government has agreed to give away a key strategic asset in the Indian Ocean, ending more than 200 years of British sovereignty. It is a wrong decision, and we stand by that completely. A month has now gone since the government's announcement, but we're still in the dark about exactly what the government has agreed, and this is simply not acceptable. We have no treaty, and vital questions remain unanswered. That is unacceptable, and the Minister needs to put that right today. We cannot afford for our military base on Diego Garcia to be compromised in this way. So may I ask, what safeguards will be in place to ensure that no other states can establish themselves or place their assets, and in particular strategic assets, on any nearby islands in the archipelago? And how does this decision affect the strategic defence review that is underway right now? How much money will Labour be asking British taxpayers to send to Mauritius each year under this deal, which we don't even know the details of? Which departmental budgets will this come from? What's the total figure? The House expects transparency on this, Mr Speaker, including about what taxpayers are funding, and we need to hold the government to account on this. So can the Minister Please give a cast-iron guarantee that the UK will be able to unilaterally extend the agreement on the military base beyond 99 years, because that's all we've heard for now. What will be the mechanism for doing this? This is a crucial piece of scrutiny that I think we all need to know about, particularly as the Minister has discussed and raised a point about national security, and the national security apparatus in particular agreeing to this arrangement. And what discussions has the Foreign Secretary, who I know is not here today, has personally undertaken with the Chagossian community, who he will know are beyond distraught about this agreement. The elections in Mauritius and the United States, Mr. Speaker, pose further questions, and it's right that we follow up on this. Labour rushed into this deal just before the Mauritian elections, even though ministers surely must have realised a change in government was a strong possibility. Why did they do this? So the minister does need to be clear about this. We want to know how they're going to engage with the new US administration. And Mr. Speaker, this side of the House opposes this government's decision on this, and we intend to hold the government to account.
Mr. Speaker, can I firstly welcome the Shadow Foreign Secretary to a place in this chamber? We were in a committee earlier on today, but I welcome her to a place, and as always, I've had a good engagement with her on issues in the past, but she's right to ask important questions. But I think one of the first things I need to do, Mr. Speaker, is to correct this idea somehow that we are giving up the base. That's exactly the opposite of what we're doing. We're securing the future of the base. The base will continue to operate. It will continue to operate as it has done. She asks an important question about security guarantees in relation to the Outer Islands. This is an important question. There will be clear commitments in the treaty for robust security arrangements, including preventing the presence of foreign security forces on the Outer Islands. We simply would not have signed off an agreement that compromised any of our security interests or those of our allies. And indeed, this has been discussed not just at the political level in the United States, but at a deep technical level. And she will know from her time in government about the nature of the special relationship and the depth of that relationship. And that is why we've only proceeded on the basis that we were all satisfied with these arrangements. And she will be able to scrutinise these in due course, as will the House, Mr. Speaker. The treaty will be presented in the usual way after signature. It will go through the usual process. She asks when. We've, of course, just had the Mauritian election. Of course, we'll be engaging with the new administration there. We'll be seeking to present this for signature, and then we will be presenting the treaty in all its detail to the House. She asked about an extension period, Mr. Speaker. There is a provision in the treaty for an extension period after the 99-year period. And she asked about the Chagossians. Again, I would gently say there are a range of views in the Chagossian community. Those have been expressed to me on a range of occasions, both before I came into government and since I've been in government. There are a range of views on this arrangement. We respect all the different views that are out there. We will continue to engage with the Chagossian community, but I am absolutely clear that there are important provisions in this deal that support the Chagossian community, both their ability to return to the Outer Islands, the visits, the trust fund, the unilateral support we will continue to provide, and of course the fact that Chagossians are welcome to come here to the UK and take up British citizenship, which was an agreement under the previous government.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Portsmouth is the home of the Royal Navy, and as the Portsmouth North MP, can I welcome the appointment of Jonathan Powell as the National Security Advisor, who played an important part in negotiating this deal? Does the Minister agree with me that his experience in helping to negotiate the Good Friday Agreement and work on some of the world's most complex conflicts, he is uniquely placed to advise the government on tackling the challenges ahead and to protect the advancements of UK security?
Well, I totally agree with my honourable friend, who I know takes a keen interest in the overseas territories, in particular Gibraltar. For her comments, I totally agree with her about the new National Security Advisor. He's a remarkable individual with a huge track record in government of making deals, of getting things done, which I know is appreciated by our friends on the opposite side of the Atlantic too. And he is somebody who takes the national security of this country extraordinarily seriously. And therefore, I completely agree with her characterisation.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Al Pinkerton.
Mr. Speaker, many Chagossians from all over the country gathered at a rally yesterday where they expressed their concerns about the UK-Mauritius agreement, and we reiterate our concerns here today. The exclusion of the voice of Chagossians is wrong. It cannot be right, and surely no member of this House could think it is acceptable, that the Chagossians are denied the opportunity for self-determination. So can I ask the Minister to update the House to confirm, please, the timescales by which Parliament will have an oversight over the final treaty? Will the Minister also look again at injecting the voice of Chagossians into this process, even at this late stage, please? And can we also raise, please, the case of the Tamils stranded on Diego Garcia? We welcome recent news reports that they will now be airlifted to the UK, but will the Minister update the House on whether this will take place and whether they will be permitted permanent right to resettlement in the UK? Thank you.
Well, Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable gentleman speaking for the Liberal Democrats for his questions. I know the future of the islands is hugely important to the Chagossian community. I've engaged with the Chagossian community over many, many years, and since I've been in government too. And we have always been clear, Mr Speaker, on the importance of respecting their interests. I do have to say, though, that the negotiations were between the UK and Mauritius as the sovereign states, with our priority being to secure the full operation of the base on Diego Garcia. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is crucial that we recognise the importance of Chagossian interests within this process, and we have done. And I am confident that when the full deal is presented to Parliament, which it will do in due course, that there will be important provisions in there that I think will reassure members of the Chagossian community. And as I mentioned, some of them already have been made public in terms of the ability to visit, the ability to resettle on the outer islands, the UK citizenship guarantees, the trust fund, and of course the UK's own support, which is crucially important. And this comes on back of support for some time. He asked about the Sri Lankan migrants on Diego Garcia. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government inherited a deeply troubling situation which remained unresolved under the last administration for years after the migrants' arrival on Diego Garcia, resulting in mounting legal challenges. And we've been working at pace to find a solution that protects the welfare of the individuals and the integrity of British territorial borders. Due to the exceptional nature of the cases, the government has taken the decision to relocate a small number of the migrants to the UK, but this is subject to security checks. They will get a short period of permission to enter the UK when the individuals can consider their personal circumstances and next steps.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the wonderful things about our Parliament, our democracy, is that our citizens can see our proceedings, but so too can our foes. Those who wish us harm, those who have no good intentions toward us, will be looking across at the opposition benches, and they will be seeing that there is not a credible national security team when they're asking questions of this government. But I wanted to confine my question about a constituent of mine who has lived in the UK for the last 17 years after leaving the Chagos Islands. He is keen to reunite with his family who are now UK citizens, but housing costs are an issue. Will the Minister get back to me with information about whether housing support could be part of overall government support to the Chagossian community?
Madam Deputy Speaker, well, I thank him for his question. Obviously, I don't know the full details of his individual constituent's case, but if he wants to write to me about that, I will, of course, come back to him in due course.
James Cloverley.
Can the Minister confirm or deny that the Right Honourable Member for Holborn and St Pancras had any unminted conversations with Philippe Sands, KC, about the Mauritian claim over the Chagos Islands?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Prime Minister engaged with the former Prime Minister of Mauritius. He engaged with the US administration over these matters. We've engaged with a wide range of partners in these discussions, and he, of course, is very familiar with them as the former Foreign Secretary who was part of that process.
John Slinger.
I hope my honourable friend, the Minister, will agree with me that as we discuss the very important issues raised by the honourable member for Clacton, that we acknowledge that everyone, all honourable and right honourable members, are doing what is in the best interest of our country. Yeah. And indeed, that honourable and right honourable members opposite do not have a monopoly on national security and on defence. Yeah. And indeed, that it's this government that's reforming and improving our international reputation around the world. And our decision on the Chagos Islands, in protecting the base and the other issues that my honourable friend has mentioned, is an important part of this.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, Madam Deputy Speaker, the importance of national security to this government is the heart of the missions that the Prime Minister has set out, that are being put into practice by the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary, myself and others across government. We would never take decisions that compromise the national security of this country or indeed of our allies, and that's why I'm confident this decision is the right one. And let's remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, this was begun under the previous administration because they recognised the challenge and that something needed to be done about this.
Sir Ed Duncan-Smith.
Deputy Speaker, can I just say to the right honourable gentleman that surely now, given that the fact that the Mauritian government that he was dealing with has failed now and is no longer in power, isn't this now really a case of a deal with the wrong people at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, and it has abandoned the Chagossians. Chagossians have been very clear throughout, and it can't misrepresent the fact the vast majority wanted to go back, but they also wanted to remain British citizens. And so now we have an incoming government in America, a new government in Mauritius. What is the point of continuing with this agreement? We should start again and recognise the Chagossians do not want to be Mauritian, but they want to have us give them their property back. Why don't we just do that and simplify the whole issue?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, the right honourable gentleman knows that, of course, the national security interests of this country and indeed of our allies transcend administrations. We've just had an election. His former government started this process. We're the ones who got it done. And with regard to Mauritius, we welcome Dr Ramgoolin's election. I understand that he and his government are going to be sworn in over the next few days, and we look forward to working with them to take forward this agreement. He's a friend of the UK with deep professional and personal connections, having studied and worked here, and we're looking forward to working with him. And I would point out that his party in opposition also made clear that they in no way wanted to contend with the operation of our base on Diego Garcia. So we're looking forward to engaging with them in the days to come.
Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the spirit of cross-party working, I'm wondering if the Minister would like to take this moment to thank the previous Conservative government for starting negotiations on this important work. Because they realised then, even if they do not realise now, the importance of this for our country's national security.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his observation, and the right honourable gentleman, the former Foreign Secretary, appears to be on his way out. But he recognised, as did many others in the previous administration, that we needed to secure a long-term basis for this base to meet the security needs of ourselves and our allies, and we need to put it on a sure legal footing. And we were the government that came in and got the deal done.
Deputy Speaker, does the Minister agree with me that the principal way to defend national security is to stand fast behind the international rules-based system? And does he further agree that the principal way to do that is to adhere to rulings of institutions like the International Court of Justice? Now, and furthermore, we've had a great deal of concern in this House in this urgent question about the sovereign democratic will of the Chagossians. So what mechanism will the UK government put in place to ensure that this House can have confidence that their sovereign ambitions as a people will be respected in this treaty and not simply sacrificed for convenience?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, he's absolutely right when it comes to international law and adherence to it, and this government is committed to the rule of law and international law, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get this deal done, to put that base on a secure legal footing, and our relationships with Mauritius and indeed other states, and there have been substantial criticism from other key partners around the world about our failure to come to a settlement on this, which was impacting on our interests. So he's absolutely right on that point. As I've said repeatedly on the Chagossians, I've engaged with them on many occasions. We will continue to engage with them. We'll continue to listen to the range of views that are in the community, which there are a huge number of, and we'll continue to ensure that their interests are protected, which I'm confident this treaty does.
Mark Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I know the Minister is a strong ally and supporter of all our overseas territories, as is this government. Will he take this moment now to restate this government's unconditional commitment to the right of the people of the Falklands and the peoples of Gibraltar to self-determine? And will he also confirm that we will continue to work closely with all of our overseas territories?
Well, I thank him, Madam Deputy Speaker, for his important question. I can absolutely confirm that, and not least in the actions of myself and my ministerial colleagues. My colleague, the Minister for the Armed Forces, was in the Falklands just in the last week, reiterating our absolute and robust commitment to their self-determination and sovereignty. I was in Gibraltar making the same point just a few weeks ago, and I was in 3 of our overseas territories last week making just the same commitments. So this government is committed to our overseas territories. I look forward to welcoming the leaders to the Joint Ministerial Council next week to say that in person.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister once again has come to this chamber and said that the last government started these negotiations. May I remind him that it was the last government that ended the negotiations because the Foreign Secretary did not agree with the advisory legal advice that was given. This Foreign Secretary capitulated in 2 days. He has said that he will not reveal the cost of this deal because